Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Well, 1 year later, after a severe root prune on my Bald Cypress, I'm ready to root prune it once again. Here is a look at my Bald Cypress. You can see the needles or leaves are just starting to come out on it. It grew quite well last summer after that severe root pruning. Originally, it had one of the worst root systems I've seen on a tree. I'll take you back in time now and show you the highlights of repotting it almost exactly 1 year ago. I've already done the pruning on this tree. I did this over the winter. I took a lot off the top, creating a new trunk line with a bit of taper to it. You can see the leaves are coming out on the tree now, and you can also see it's full of weeds in the pot. So I want to get it in fresh bonsai soil, a larger pot to grow the tree a bit stronger over the summer. So these Bald Cypress, they can get a really nice buttress root base. So that's what I'm after, is to get the roots kind of sorted out and then hopefully grow a really nice kind of radial root system and create a nice Bald Cypress tree. And this is the first Bald Cypress I've owned. I thought I had another one, but it turned out to be, I think, a Dawn Redwood. Those white roots that were intertwined in here were from a weed. And you can see the root system isn't active yet, so the tree is still dormant. So I can see, some very thick roots. One comes out here, and it curls. Where does it curl? It curls underneath here. There's some other ones that start here and curl around. So yeah, not a very good root system on this tree. They're all tangled and curled around. And I'm going to start down here. Here I go. So I'm using a bit of the flare from those thick roots. So here I go, a big cut coming up. Like that. There's the shape of the root system. Interesting. Yeah, so there's my big ball of tangled, knotted roots. You just couldn't sort those out. They're just too far gone. There's undercut here. They're just horrible, is what the word is. So here's what I'm left with. So I'm left with a meager root system, but I think it's strong enough that the tree will survive, and I will prune off some of these to keep them going in a radial direction. I don't want to create more tangled roots. Okay, that's about it for the root pruning. That is quite a severe root system, but I think there's enough left there that the tree will do fine. I think that's full enough. I can plant the tree now. Okay, little tree. I'm going to put it right in the middle of the pot. Like that, vertical, and then I'll fill it in with soil. So the roots will be buried fairly deeply in the pot. I'm in no rush to expose those roots. Okay, this is all looking good. Again, I've taken a chance on this tree while it's young and I haven't got much work into it. I've cut that root system off, and now it can grow a really nice radial root system, getting a nice buttressed root system on this Bald Cypress. And as I say, get this work done when the tree is young, when you haven't got any work into it. Take the chance on the tree. If it lives, you've got a fantastic root system underway. If it dies, well, then you get another tree and you try again. Getting a nice root system on a Bald Cypress is really important, because that's what they're known for, is these beautiful buttress surface roots, and kind of generally they grow them in a flat top canopy or a conical type form. I gave it quite a severe root pruning in spring, right down to the point where I thought, oh, I hope this tree survives, and it did, and it's growing really, really strongly now. The Bald Cypress needs a lot of water, and I keep a tray of water underneath the tree. And I was away in Toronto the one day, and the tree dried out, and the foliage at the top here turned brown. But it's regrowing once again, so the tree, it's healthy up top. I didn't lose the apex of the tree. It's just a bit of a setback. Here is a look at the tray of water I have under the tree. It's probably a little small. I could use a bigger container to keep the tree hydrated on those hot days. After that severe root pruning, my Bald Cypress recovered and grew really well over the summer. I was even able to prune the tree. I keep a tray of water underneath the tree in the summer to keep the soil nice and moist. And Bald Cypress are good trees for growing root systems, so I'm hoping this time with the repotting, I have a better root system to start off with than the one I had last year. Not only did my Bald Cypress grow well last summer, but the moss did too. So I'm going to start today by stripping away all this moss from the surface of the soil. It's got quite a thick layer. So my goal for this tree is to grow it slowly and carefully, trying to get that nice buttressed root system that you see on mature Bald Cypress trees. That is my goal. My goal is not to grow it into a giant tree quickly, but to keep it as small as possible and try and get all the characteristics of a mature Bald Cypress in a small tree. Similar to my giant sequoias, I want to try and grow a miniature version of a large tree. I'll just remove all the moss that's growing up the trunk here. So I can already see a bit of taper on the trunk at the base here. That's a good sign. And the reason I'm repotting it today is I want to keep the root system in proportion. I don't want one root getting too thick compared to the others. I want to grow a nice, even radial root base. And I think that will give me a nice looking trunk in the future. So the trunk is cleaned up of the moss now. So I've got to get the tree out of the pot. Okay. So I don't know what the root system will be like. I'm hoping it's developed well, but you never know. It's only been a year. I do notice there's roots growing out the drainage hole, so it's definitely grown some kind of a root system. There it is. You can see the soil is still crumbly. So I'll start to rake away the soil, exposing the roots, and I'll see what I have. So you can see the tree wasn't root bound or anything. This is purely an aesthetic pruning, as I said, to balance the root system and manage it, probably every year for the next, maybe even the life of the tree. Frequent repotting to keep the root system in check. Because it certainly doesn't hurt to repot these Bald Cypress every year. They recover quickly. I think you can see how much the roots have grown here. It's quite amazing when you think back to just a year ago what the root system looked like. Wow, there's some thick roots here. So I'm really glad I'm doing this repotting every year. I think it'll keep this tree in check and a lot more miniature looking for the future. On the bottom, you can see there's a thick root that's grown well, several thick roots that have grown on the bottom of the root base here. I have a drainage screen I've got to try and get out here. Wow. There are roots that have grown through this drainage screen. I don't know if I'll get that out. I might have to cut it out. So I'll continue combing out the roots and the soil, exposing the root base of the tree. So I think the moral of the story here is don't be afraid to do fairly aggressive root pruning on your bald cypress, and don't be afraid to repot them every year, because I don't think it hurts them at all. I think it will benefit the tree in the end. Okay, the drainage screen is out. It's like a spring of roots down here. Okay, I think that's pretty well bare rooted. I'll see if I can wash the root system, and then I'll be back. I was able to wash the root system, so there's a look at it. Wow. I'm just amazed. I'm just totally amazed at the growth. So there's my cut underneath where I chopped most of the roots off last year, and it's starting to heal over. I think at the end of this year that'll be totally healed on the bottom. So the next thing, I've got to look at the root system. I'm going to eliminate any obvious defects. So if you look here, here's a radial root, and then off of that comes this root at 90 degrees to it. So I'm going to prune that one away. It's just not going a good direction. Now I've got to untangle it from this. There. So there's one root removed. So now on bald cypress trees, if you look at pictures of the root base on a mature bald cypress, they have, you know, the trunk comes down and then it flares out with the roots kind of at this angle. So this is a good root. You know, I don't want them kind of flatter like a maple tree, but I want them to angle down into the soil just like they are. But I will correct what ones I can. So up top here, there's a root that starts here and it crosses this major root here. So I'm going to remove that one. And it actually starts from way in here. So I'll remove that root like that. So there's root number 2 off. This one's getting a little off radial, but it's not the worst in the world. There's a few roots that are high here, but they're radial, so I think those are okay. They can thicken up. There's a dead one here. Take that off. I think this one, that one has a few roots growing off of it. I think that's okay also. It's getting kind of high up, isn't it? But it's kind of equal to this one. So here, I've got a radial root that comes out and then it dives straight down between these other 2 surface roots. And I'm thinking this one is too horizontal. It doesn't flow down into the soil. It's almost 90 degrees to the trunk. So it's got to be removed. So I'll just rough cut it off first, like that. Untangle it, and then I'll come in and clean that up, taking it off flush to the trunk. Like that. All right. So you can see that other root, which is quite nice. There's another one beside it, which is all right too. This one isn't quite radial, but it's not bad. I think that's the one I mentioned before, or maybe it was this one. It was that one. There's one here. That one's not too bad. So I think the surface roots are sorted. I got rid of all the major defects. So the next step is, you can see how deep the root base is. Everything's growing straight down. So I need to prune that back to create, you know, subdivisions and finer roots coming off of these thick roots. You can see the hairs here, root hairs that have started. So that's my next step, is to prune off all those long roots. And I think I'm going to use the ratcheting pruners for that. They cut really well. So I've got to pick a height, and I think it's going to be somewhere about here. Well, maybe even here, because this one kind of dives back in, and I can keep kind of more of the radial roots. So I'll come in right here, prune that root off. So I'll cut all the roots at about the same level. They all seem to have root hairs coming off the tree, or the root at that kind of level. So this one to here. Here's a big, big, thick one. So it has some root hairs here. I'll come just below there, taking that off. Big cut. Look at all the roots that are attached to that. Then I've got one that dives down here. So I'll take it off right here. Like that. So even though I have a way better root system than I did last year, I still have to do some pretty aggressive cutting here because the roots grew so much, which is a nice problem to have. And it's nice to know that, you know, the tree will survive and generate new roots in the future quite easily. There's a big one off. Then I've got one growing down under the root base, straight down here. I need to get rid of that one. I want them kind of fanning out radially. So I'm going to take that one off right here. Pruning that away. There's another one here that maybe I can sort that out, yeah. So let me try and lay the tree down flat now, and I'll prune up the remaining roots. All right, let me see if I can get these roots kind of spread out here as they would go in the pot. Like that. So this one, you know, it's getting quite long. I'm going to prune it back to here. Taking that one off. This one's getting long. I'll take that one off also. These two. Here. Here. Remove those. There's a few fine ones I can just trim back here. It's kind of a profile prune. And then I'm just looking for any that are maybe sticking up. See, this one's kind of, well, I guess it's okay. It's not really crossing too badly. I do think I'm going to take, because this root kind of comes out and then it starts to curve, I'm going to take it back a little further like that. And then this thick one, I think I better take it back a little further also. I have root hairs coming down here, but I also have some up higher, and I think it'll generate new roots quite easily. Sure hope so anyway. This This one can be shortened a little, this one too, and this one. Like that. Pretty aggressive, but you know, I think you need to be quite aggressive with the roots on these Bald Cypress. Okay, I think that's it. That is my root system for 2024's root pruning. Sure has come a long way since the first time I root pruned it. Wow. And you can see, you know, it is flaring out on these roots, the trunk. It's thickening up and getting that Bald Cypress look to the root base. So it's quite exciting. I'm very happy with what I have. The root system's looking really good. Okay, so I think I'm going to put it back in the same pot. It's a terracotta pot. It sucks up water and holds water, and it did very well in it last year, so it's certainly not, you know, too small for the tree or anything. So back into the same pot it goes. I'm really glad that I chose to repot this tree for a second year in a row. If I had have left it as it was for another year, I think the root system would have got too far out of balance. I wouldn't have got all these nice fine roots near the trunk to develop into the future. I think it would have just been a mess if I had left it another year. So I'm really, really glad I chose to repot it for the second year in a row. Here is the Blue Jay Bonsai Carnage Cam. So there's all the roots I took off compared to what is left on the tree. What a difference. I've got the pot all cleaned up. I have a new drainage screen in the bottom. So I'll add a base layer of soil and get the tree planted. Okay, so I have my soil in the pot. So I'll place the tree right on center. Make sure my trunk is vertical, because you know how I like vertical trees. Okay, that's good. I'll just make sure my roots are combed out once I find my root rake. I'm not sure where it is. Here it is, way back here. Yeah, I'll just make sure I've got any roots that I can move around a bit sorted out. All these little fine roots will thicken up and become major roots someday, so it's important to comb them out and try and get them going in a nice radial direction. Okay, that is good. I'll show you a view of that. Here's a look at the roots in the pot. So I think that's all looking very, very good. And I'll fill it in with soil. Okay, I'm adding the soil now. So there's not much chance of getting air pockets in the root system because they're so kind of spread out and flat. There's no tangled roots. So it's just a matter of kind of tamping the soil down like that. The height of the tree in the pot is looking good. Just kind of can just see the start of some of those roots that were up high. Okay, that looks good. The tree is ready to be watered. All right, here I go with the water. And I'll keep my tray of water underneath the Bald Cypress. Keep it topped up. Seemed to work really well last year, so I'll continue that. And that is watered well. I'll show you the top of the tree here. So there's a very important bud right in the middle between those two branches, and that will be my new leader as it develops to create, you know, a straight, tall, tapered trunk. A lot of these other branches, once that leader starts growing, will probably get pruned away because I'm after, you know, getting taper in the trunk and growing a vertical trunk line. I'm in no hurry to grow it, you know, tall or anything, but I'll let it grow for sure this year to help thicken up that transition where I took off some big branches there. And I think once that starts growing, I'll remove all the other branches and just let that leader grow. The branching and the branches can come later on the tree. I'll spin the tree around so you can see it from all angles. So here is the current front, coming around to the right hand side, to the back, the left hand side, and back to the front. So these spins are just for reference. Maybe someday, you know, when this tree's more mature, we'll show a comparison of what it looked like now compared to what it'll look like in the future. Before we go, I'll just show you a quick update to some of the trees in the greenhouse. So here is my black locust tree, and it's leafing out. The leaves are looking really nice and miniature at the moment. Looks quite nice. My birch tree here is leafing out nicely. It's looking really nice too. The Osage orange forest is beginning to leaf out. Springtime in the forest. The royal oaks up here in the corner, they've got some nice looking leaves on them. That's nice to see. The Korean maple is leafed out. The hawthorn continues to grow. The trident maple's growing. The mulberry back there is leafed out. The Amur maple back there is growing really well. Even the elm that I repotted recently is starting to leaf out now. Yeah, so everything I've repotted this season so far is looking good. Yeah, there's been no disasters yet. I mean, it still could come, but even the Austrian pine, the candles are still extending on it. Yeah, the repotting of this Austrian pine, it was very similar to when I last repotted it. So if you look back at the repotting video from, I think it was 5 years ago, it was a very similar procedure, and the tree survived that really well. And so far it's looking good for this year also. The two larches that I repotted this year are still growing really well. So my plan is to let them extend a bit, get some vigor, and then I'll be pruning these branches back more compact. You can see there's a lot of buds closer to the trunk here. So I'll be pruning the branches right back, trying to get a tight conical form to these trees. The bald cypress in nature is a very unique looking tree. It has a lot of special characteristics that set it apart from other trees. You know, they lose their leaves in the winter, which is pretty exciting seeing those fall colors on them. So I'm looking forward to growing this into a miniature bald cypress in the future. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.